The air was thick with fear. Every breath Lucas took sounded like a struggle, each gasp rattling in his tiny chest. His fingers clung weakly to my shirt as I carried him through the hospital doors, his face pale, his lips tinged with blue. "Somebody help!" I shouted, my voice cracking. The nurse at the front desk jumped up immediately, her eyes widening as she saw Lucas. "He's not breathing properly." I choked out. He just collapsed at home." "Get a crash cart to room 3 now," she barked to a nearby doctor. 2 nurses rushed over, guiding me onto a gurney where they carefully laid my son down. I tried to stay calm, but the sight of his small chest rising and falling in desperate, shallow breaths made my knees weak. Within seconds, the medical team surrounded him. A nurse placed an oxygen mask over his nose while a doctor adjusted the settings. Machines beeped, wires were attached, voices blended into a frantic hum. "Mr. Miller, we need you to step back," a doctor said firmly. "But we need space to help him. Please, let us do our job." I staggered backward, my hands trembling. The room swayed around me as I watched my son fight for air, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I pressed a hand against the wall for support, sucking in deep breaths to steady myself. This couldn't be happening. Lucas had been fine yesterday, laughing, playing with his toy cars, insisting on staying up late for one more bedtime story. Now he was lying motionless on a hospital bed, his life hanging by a thread. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers. Jessica. I had to call her. She should be here. She was his mother. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, then to voicemail. I tried again. No answer. Frustrated, I switched to text. "Lucas is in the hospital. He can't breathe. Please come home." The dots appeared, signaling she was typing. My heart leaped in relief, until the response came. "I need a break, David. This is too much. Handle it. Handle it." My stomach twisted as I stared at the message, my mind refusing to believe it. I typed again, my fingers tight around the phone. "Jessica, this is our son. He's barely breathing. I don't know if—" The reply came instantly. "David, I told you. I need a break. I'll check in later." I stared at the screen, willing it to change, hoping I had misread something. But the words were there, cold and final. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the lump in my throat. I had no time for anger, no time to break down. Lucas needed me. I shoved my phone into my pocket and forced myself to focus. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I lost track. I watched helplessly as doctors and nurses worked on my son. His small chest rose and fell beneath the oxygen mask, but the beeping machines told me the truth. He was still struggling. A nurse approached, her voice soft. "His oxygen levels were dangerously low when you brought him in, but he's stable for now. We'll need to monitor him closely over the next few hours." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Can I stay with him?" "Of course," she said kindly. "He'll need you here." I collapsed into the chair beside Lucas' bed, taking his small hand in mine. His fingers were warm, but they barely curled around mine like they usually did. I brushed his hair back gently. "I'm right here, buddy," I whispered. "Daddy's not going anywhere." As the beeping of the machines filled the silent room, exhaustion pulled at my body. But sleep wouldn't come, not when my mind kept replaying Jessica's words. I need a break. A break from what? From being a mother? From being a wife? From responsibility? Something in my chest twisted painfully, but before I could dwell on it, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Jessica. It was a notification. I swiped at the screen absent-mindedly, but when I saw the image that popped up, my blood ran cold. Jessica was on a beach. A tropical paradise. Crystal clear water, golden sand, a cocktail in her manicured hand, and beside her, her lover, Mark, smiling, kissing her cheek. My breath caught in my throat. My hands clenched into fists. My wife wasn't just avoiding responsibility. She had run away, abandoned us, left our son fighting for his life while she basked in the sun with another man. I felt sick. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look at Lucas. His small body, hooked up to machines, struggling to breathe. How could she just leave him? Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I had wasted enough time begging for someone who didn't care. I turned off my phone and placed it face down on the table. I knew then that something had shifted inside me. Jessica had made her choice. Now, I would make mine. I would stay by my son's side, no matter what. And as for Jessica, when she finally decided to return, she wouldn't find the husband she left behind. She'd find a man who was done. Time blurred into a restless haze of waiting. The fluorescent lights in the hospital never dimmed, making it impossible to tell whether it was day or night. I barely left Lucas' bedside, afraid that if I so much as blinked too long, something would go wrong. Jessica had vanished. Days had passed, and still, no word from her. My calls went unanswered, my texts unread. I wasn't even surprised anymore. The nurses had started giving me looks, sympathetic ones, the kind you give to someone who's been left behind. They knew. I could see it in their eyes. They had probably seen her social media posts, just like I had. My wife was somewhere warm and beautiful, sipping expensive cocktails with another man, while I sat in this cold, sterile room, watching over our son alone. Lucas stirred, a weak whimper escaping his lips. I bolted upright, my heart pounding as his eyes fluttered open. They were still glassy from the medication, unfocused, but they found me after a moment. "Daddy?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I squeezed his small hand. "Hey, buddy. I'm right here." He blinked slowly, his tiny fingers twitching against mine. Then, after a long pause, he asked the question I had been dreading. "Where's Mommy?" I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. He was 5. He didn't understand betrayal, abandonment, or selfishness. He only understood love. And in his innocent mind, a mother should always be there when her child is sick. I forced a smile, brushing his hair gently. "Mommy will be back soon, buddy. She's just busy right now." It was a lie, a cowardly one. But how could I tell him the truth? That his mother had chosen a vacation over him? That she didn't even care enough to ask how he was doing? Lucas didn't seem convinced, but he was too weak to question me. His eyes drifted shut again, his breathing slow and steady. I let out a shaky breath, rubbing my hands over my face. "That was a good answer," a soft voice said from behind me. I turned to see one of the nurses, Emily. She was young, maybe early 30s, with kind blue eyes and a gentle presence that had made the past few days bearable. She had been the one bringing me coffee, making sure I ate at least something, even when I had no appetite. "You don't have to sugarcoat it," I muttered, leaning back in the chair. I lied to him. Flat out lied. Emily pulled up a chair beside me. "You protected him," she corrected. "There's no easy way to explain to a child that their mother doesn't care enough to be here." I let out a bitter laugh. "She hasn't even called to check on him. Not once." Emily sighed. "I've seen it before. Some people just don't have it in them. The love a child needs." "She wasn't always like this," I admitted. "Or maybe I just didn't want to see it." Emily said nothing, giving me space to speak if I wanted to. I hadn't thought about it in years, but suddenly, memories of our marriage surfaced like old wounds reopening. Jessica had changed after Lucas was born. At first, I thought it was exhaustion. Being new parents was hard. The sleepless nights, the constant crying, the overwhelming responsibility. But as time passed, I started to notice things. She was distant, emotionally detached. She started staying out late, claiming she needed alone time. She rolled her eyes when Lucas cried, sighed in frustration when he needed her. I took over most of the parenting, thinking I was just being supportive, but now I realized she had been slowly checking out of our family for years. She was never built for motherhood, and maybe she was never built for marriage either. Emily touched my arm gently, pulling me back to the present. "You're a good father, David." I let out a breath. Am I? I couldn't even protect him from this. From her. She shook her head. You're here. That's what matters. Before I could respond, the door opened, and the doctor stepped in. His expression was serious, the kind that made my stomach drop. Mr. Miller, can we talk? I nodded quickly, standing up. What is it? Is he getting worse? The doctor glanced at Lucas, who was still asleep. His oxygen levels are stable, but not improving as quickly as we'd hoped. If he doesn't respond better to treatment soon, we may need to consider more aggressive measures. What does that mean? My voice was barely steady. We may have to move him to the ICU and put him on a ventilator, he said gently. The world tilted slightly. ICU. Ventilator. Machines breathing for him. I rubbed a hand over my face, forcing myself to stay calm. What else can we do? We're doing everything we can, but sometimes children respond better when they have both parents present. The doctor hesitated before adding, if his mother is available, it might help to have her here. A bitter chuckle escaped me before I could stop it. She's not coming. The doctor frowned but didn't push further. Then just keep doing what you're doing. He needs you. I nodded numbly as he left, Emily giving me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before following him. Alone in the quiet, sterile room, I sat back down and held Lucas' tiny hand again. Don't worry, buddy, I whispered. I won't leave you. I meant it. Even if his mother had abandoned us, I would stay. Even if it broke me. The beeping of the monitors was steady now, rhythmic and reassuring. For the first time in days, Lucas' breathing was strong, his tiny chest rising and falling with more ease. I sat beside him, my fingers wrapped gently around his, exhaustion clinging to me like a second skin. But for once, there was relief. The doctors had said he was stable, still weak, still needing oxygen, but no longer in immediate danger. The weight on my chest lifted slightly, but another, deeper weight remained. The one that had nothing to do with Lucas' health. Jessica. She still hadn't called. Not once. I pulled out my phone and stared at our last text messages, my thumb hovering over her name. I could call her. Demand that she show up, that she at least pretend to care about the son she abandoned. But then, as if the universe itself wanted to mock me, a notification popped up on my screen. Jessica had posted again. My pulse pounded as I opened the app, dread curling in my gut. There she was, stretched out on a sun lounger, her designer sunglasses perched on her nose, a smug smile on her lips. The caption beneath the photo made my blood boil. Parent life is so stressful. Needed this break. Face blowing a kiss tropical drink. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Stressful? She had abandoned our son in a hospital bed, left me to handle everything alone, and now she was laughing about it? Flaunting her freedom while our child fought for his life? A second photo followed. This time, Mark, her lover, had his arm around her, his head tilted toward hers like they were some perfect, happy couple without a care in the world. That was it. That was my breaking point. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. My chest was heaving, my pulse a drumbeat of fury in my ears. Emily, who had just walked in with a tray of food I hadn't even realized I needed, froze in the doorway. David, she asked carefully. I need to make a call, I said, my voice cold, controlled. I didn't trust myself to say more than that. I stormed out of the room, barely registering the hushed conversations of nurses as I walked past. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my contacts. I found the number and pressed dial. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. David? What's going on? Eric, I said, my voice tight. I need a divorce lawyer. Now. There was a beat of silence. I thought you might, Eric said. I saw the photos. Of course, he had. At this point, the whole damn world had probably seen them. Can you help me? I asked, pacing the hallway. Absolutely, Eric said. I'll draw up the papers. Do you want to push for full custody? I hesitated. running a hand down my face. Yes, I said finally. She doesn't deserve him. Agreed, Eric said. And honestly, with the evidence you have, it won't be hard to prove she's an unfit mother. I exhaled. Good. I want this done as soon as possible. I'll get started, Eric promised. David, I know this is rough, but you're doing the right thing. I ended the call and leaned against the cold hospital wall, my head pounding. I had always known things were bad between Jessica and me, but I had stupidly believed she would at least try for Lucas. That deep down, some maternal instinct would kick in, but it never had. And now I was done. I rubbed my temples, forcing my thoughts to steady. Then, just as I was about to head back to Lucas' room, my phone lit up with another notification. An ad. Curious about your ancestry? Find out the truth with our easy at-home DNA test kit. I frowned. It was probably just one of those targeted ads, the kind that popped up after one too many late-night Google searches. But something about it made my stomach twist. DNA test. A cold, unwelcome thought slithered into my mind. What if Lucas wasn't mine? I shook my head. No, that was ridiculous. But then again, was it? Jessica had been distant for years. The late nights, the sudden work trips, the way she always seemed just a little too defensive whenever I asked questions. And now, the way she had left Lucas behind without a second thought. I felt sick. I didn't want to believe it. Lucas was my son. I had been there when he was born, held him in my arms, stayed up all night rocking him when he cried. I had taught him how to tie his shoes, how to ride a bike, how to build the tallest Lego tower. But what if? I swallowed hard, staring at the ad. Did I want to know the truth? Would it change anything if I did? I exhaled slowly and tapped on the link. The airport was buzzing with life. Travelers pulling heavy luggage, flight announcements echoing through the halls, families reuniting with hugs and tears. But I felt none of it. I stood at the arrival's gate, gripping the envelope in my hand so tightly that the edges crumpled. Jessica's flight had landed 20 minutes ago. Any minute now, she would walk through those sliding glass doors, fresh from her vacation, oblivious to the storm waiting for her. I had rehearsed this moment over and over in my head. I had imagined her reaction, the way her face would twist in shock when she saw the divorce papers. I wanted her to feel what I had felt: betrayal, anger, devastation. But as she finally appeared, strolling towards me with a pair of oversized sunglasses perched on her nose and a smug expression on her lips, I realized something. She wouldn't feel a damn thing. She wasn't surprised to see me. She wasn't guilty, remorseful, or even the least bit concerned about Lucas. No, Jessica looked annoyed, as if I was the problem here. With one hand, she tugged her designer suitcase along, her free hand holding her phone as she typed away, probably posting another vacation update. The same phone she had ignored all my calls on. When she reached me, she lowered her sunglasses just enough to give me a bored, unimpressed look. Wow, David. Really? You came all the way here? Bit dramatic, don't you think? My fingers curled into a fist, but I forced myself to stay calm. I pulled out the envelope and held it out to her. Divorce papers, I said coolly. Jessica blinked once. Then, to my utter disbelief, she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward one. A genuine laugh, like this was the most amusing thing she had heard all week. She snatched the envelope from my hand and flipped through the pages carelessly. Oh, David, you actually went through with it? Wow, took you long enough. My pulse pounded in my ears. You don't even care, do you? Jessica sighed, snapping the envelope shut. David, come on. You act like this is some big betrayal. We both knew this marriage was dead years ago. She waved a hand dismissively. Honestly, I was waiting for you to get the hint. I clenched my jaw. Lucas nearly died, Jessica. And you, she groaned, cutting me off. God, not this again. I needed a break. I deserved it. Raising a kid is exhausting, and honestly, I never even wanted one. Her words hit me like a slap. How can you say that? She smirked. Because, David, he's not even yours. Everything around me went silent. The sounds of the airport, the distant chatter, the rolling suitcases, all of it faded. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process what she had just said. Excuse me? My voice barely came out. Jessica sighed dramatically, crossing her arms. I mean, come on, David. Did you really think Lucas was yours? You're not that stupid, are you? My stomach twisted. The nagging suspicion I had buried deep inside, the one that started when I saw that damn DNA test ad, roared to life. She saw the look on my face and grinned. I was seeing Mark before I even got pregnant, she said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. Lucas was never yours. I felt like I was going to be sick. For 4 years, I had loved that boy. I had held him when he cried, kissed his scraped knees, rocked him to sleep. I had been his father in every way that mattered. And now Jessica was standing here, throwing it all in my face like it meant nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, to let my rage consume me. But then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it, but something made me pull it out. Lucas' name flashed across the screen. I swallowed hard and answered. Hey, buddy. A small, tired voice came through. Daddy? My breath hitched. Daddy. Not David. Not some stranger. Daddy. And just like that, everything clicked into place. Jessica's words might have shaken me, but they didn't break me. Because Lucas was my son. Maybe not by blood, but by every hug, every late-night lullaby, every scraped knee I had kissed. I inhaled deeply and looked Jessica in the eye. You know what? I said, my voice calm, steady. It doesn't matter. Jessica frowned. What? It doesn't matter if he's not mine by blood, I said. Because he's my son. I raised him. I love him. And I will never, ever abandon him the way you did. She rolled her eyes. Wow. So noble. Are you done now? I smiled. A genuine, relieved smile. Yeah, I am. I turned on my heel, walking away without another word. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. Jessica didn't look back as she strolled away, her suitcase rolling smoothly behind her. Not a hint of hesitation, not a flicker of regret. She thought she had one. I watched her disappear into the crowd, waiting for the ache to come, for the heartbreak to settle in. But as the automatic doors slid shut behind her, all I felt was an overwhelming sense of relief. She was gone. Forever. I let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. There was no fixing what was broken, no clinging to something that had died long ago. She had walked away from me, from our son. No, my son, without a second thought. And that was all the proof I needed. Love wasn't about blood. It wasn't about DNA or genetics. It was about the nights spent cradling a sick child, the whispered bedtime stories, the scraped knees and the kisses that made them better. It was about the choice to be there. And I chose Lucas. I always would. The ride back to the hospital was quiet. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my mind replaying Jessica's words over and over. He's not even yours. I could still hear the cold amusement in her voice, still feel the sting of those words. But then I remembered the way Lucas had called me daddy. The way he had clung to me in his weakest moments. The way he trusted me to always be there. Jessica could deny me all she wanted, but Lucas was mine where it mattered most. When I reached the hospital, I made my way to his room, my heart pounding with something I couldn't quite name. Fear? Determination? Love? I found him sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had in days. His little face lit up when he saw me. Daddy! I swallowed the lump in my throat and walked over, kneeling beside him. Hey, champ, I said softly, brushing a hand over his hair. How are you feeling? Lucas pouted. Better. Can we go home now? I smiled, blinking back tears. Yeah, buddy. Soon. Over the next few days, I stayed by Lucas' side, refusing to leave even when the nurses told me I could rest. One of them, Emily, The kind nurse who had been there from the start gave me a knowing smile one evening. "You love that boy," she said simply. I met her gaze and nodded. "More than anything." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Have you thought about making it official?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Legally adopting him," she clarified. "I know Jessica is his biological mother, but if she's out of the picture, Lucas deserves a father who's all in." The words hit me like a revelation. I was all in. That night, as Lucas slept peacefully beside me, I made a decision. Jessica may have given birth to him, but she had abandoned him in every way that mattered. And I had been his father since the moment I first held him in my arms. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "I want to adopt Lucas," I said. "Make it official." And just like that, the final piece fell into place. A week later, the doctors finally gave us the all-clear. Lucas was healthy enough to go home. As I packed up his things, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything we had been through. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the nights spent wondering if I was enough. But now, as I lifted Lucas into my arms and carried him out of that hospital, I knew the truth. I was more than enough. Lucas wrapped his arms around my neck, resting his head against my shoulder. "Are we going home, Daddy?" I pressed a kiss to his forehead, holding him close. "Yeah, buddy, we're going home." We stepped out into the sunlight, leaving the past behind. We weren't broken. We were just beginning. If you were moved by David and Lucas' journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. What would you have done in David's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and the choices we make. See you in the next story.